Because of a falsehood that was told by my stepmother, my father kicked me out of the house when I was a teenager. Now, he wants my house for my sister, but the information that I disclosed has left them unable to comprehend it. At the moment, I am a male who is 31 years old and works as a real estate developer. Nevertheless, this whole affair began when I was 15 years old. When I was 4 years old, my biological mother passed away from cancer. While I was 7 years old, my father, who was 42 years old and a male at the time, tied the knot with this woman, whom I will refer to as Beth, who is 35 years old and a female. When I was a child, she gave birth to my half-sister, Jenny, and although she first appeared to be a good person and did the whole trying too hard stepmother thing, everything changed once she gave birth to Jenny. Nothing I ever accomplished was ever enough for my father, and he was always quite harsh with me. He was so rigorous that it was almost over the top. I can still vividly recall that he did not express his happiness when I received a B+ on this really challenging chemistry test. Rather, he simply stared at me and asked, "Why isn't this an A?" Participated in the basketball team. If you didn't start, he would ask you why you weren't. That is the kind of thing. Every single time. But what about Jenny? The story is completely different. She may very well flunk a test, and they would say something to the effect of, "Oh honey, it's okay, you tried your best." While Beth made sure that Jenny was treated like a princess, I was just there, the guy who kept messing everything up. Beth made sure that Jenny was treated accordingly. When I look back on my life, I am quite confident that I had attention deficit/hyperactivity disorder, ADHD, or something similar that was never diagnosed. For example, I had difficulties concentrating and couldn't sit still in class. On the other hand, my father would sometimes yell at me rather than make an effort to figure out what was wrong. The phrase, "Why can't you just be normal like your sister?" was his favorite thing to say to each other. While I was standing there, Beth was nodding her head in agreement as if I were some kind of issue that needed to be fixed. Due to the fact that Dad worked such insanely long hours at his construction company, he spends very little time at home. At that point, Beth would reveal her true identity to the world. It would happen that she would fail to prepare enough food for dinner, forcing me to make a sandwich for myself, or that she would wash my clothes in an incorrect manner, causing them to shrink or fall apart. Do you understand what I mean when I say small things that I couldn't fully prove? To put it simply, if I tried to inform my father, he would simply say that I was causing trouble once more because Beth had convinced him that I was. All of the mental tricks that she played were the most frustrating aspect. Sometimes she would move my belongings around, and then she would tell my father that I was being messy or that something had broken, and she would always blame me for it. Considering that Beth would not lie about that, Dad believed every word that was said. It appeared as though she had him totally encircled upon her finger. That day arrived, and it was the one that altered everything. When I was heading home from school, I took the route that I always take, which was through Wilson Park. At that moment, I noticed Beth standing next to this guy by the ancient gazebo. The first thing that came to my mind was that it might have been simply a friend or something like that. However, when I saw them kissing, it wasn't just a fast kiss either, if you understand what I mean. I was unsure whether or not Beth saw me fleeing, but I believe she did. I was also familiar with the individual, and I believe his name was Mark. When Beth was apparently in charge of organizing charitable events, he would occasionally make his way to our home to attend those events. It appeared as though he was a gym-goer because he was usually wearing fancy suits and was a real buff dude. I was completely at a loss for what to do. Tell your father. Yes, you are correct. As if he would believe me. It had taken Beth years to ensure that my father believed that I was nothing more than a problem. Also, Jenny was 8 years old at the time, and her father was completely smitten with her. He would most likely believe that I was simply attempting to cause difficulties or that I was jealous. Therefore, I refrained from speaking and made an effort to forget what I had witnessed. However, as time went on, I began to notice things that I was unable to ignore, such as the peculiar reddish-brown hue of Jenny's hair, which was a color that no one else in the family had. Due to the fact that he was constantly preoccupied, Dad never noticed. As I was getting up to grab some water one night, I happened to overhear Beth talking on the phone. It was just as I was about to enter the kitchen that I heard her tone, and I immediately halted what I was doing. I only caught a few words of what she was saying, but it was enough to make my stomach drop. Mark is beginning to realize that you do not comprehend what he is saying. Prior to her uttering those words, I was completely clueless about the person she was referring about. He believes that she is his, but we are both aware of the reality. I had the sensation that the air in the room was being sucked out. I was completely aware of the person she was referring to. It's Jenny. In no way was my father her father. It was Mark. Due to the fact that Beth suddenly became quiet, it is likely that I made some noise. After that, she yelled out, "Honey, you shouldn't be up this late." She gave off an air of phony tenderness. I hurriedly returned to my room before she could catch a glimpse of me. When my heart was beating so fast, I was afraid that I would become ill. Before, I did not have any evidence, but now I knew. I was aware of the reality, and I was well aware that Beth would do all in her power to prevent me from informing my father. On the other hand, Beth must have realized that I was aware of something. Particularly when she was with Jenny, she began to watch me like a crazy person. It was impossible for me to cross the street from Jenny's place without Beth suddenly materializing out of nowhere and asking me what I was doing. Suddenly, she began to inform my father that I was behaving strangely around Jenny. I finally get it now. In the process of preparing for anything, she was making my father suspicious of me. I recall this one occasion when I was just assisting Jenny with her multiplication tables, which is something that is considered to be basic mathematics. When Beth entered the room, she almost grabbed Jenny away from me, insisting that she would assist instead. She then informed my father that I was getting too near to Jenny. Oh, dude, I can still hear her voice because of the way that she said it. Thinking about it makes me feel sick to my stomach. The situation remained the same for around 2 weeks. Beth kept a close eye on everything I did and would whisper various things to my father whenever she believed I was unable to hear her. While we were eating dinner, my father began to give me strange looks. I made an effort to move out of the house as much as I could, but it only served to make the situation much more difficult. Beth told my father that I was probably using drugs or doing anything else. No one even bothered to inquire about my well-being. Because I was under so much pressure, nobody seemed to care that my grades were falling to the ground. My father's anger continued to grow toward me. It had been approximately 2 weeks since I had seen Beth with Mark in the park, and I had returned home from school as usual. When I stepped in on that particular day, I immediately had a strange feeling. There were 2 police cars parked outside our house, and I could hear Beth crying before I ever opened the door. It was the kind of crying that people do when they are trying to garner attention, and it was quite convincing. As soon as I walked in, I saw Beth sitting on the couch, sobbing her eyes out, and 2 law enforcement officers sitting across from her. The father is positioned in the corner, giving the impression that he is going to commit a murder. No one has been able to locate Jenny. As soon as I walk in, everyone stops what they are doing and looks at me. A member of the police force steps up and inquires as to whether or not we are able to have a conversation. During the time that the other officer is with Beth and her father, they take me to the kitchen. It is at that point that they inform me that Beth and Jenny have informed them that I have been caressing Jenny in an inappropriate manner. In the beginning, I was so overwhelmed by what they were saying that I couldn't even process it. It was as if my brain had suddenly shut down. I kept asking, "What is it?" Not at all. That never took place. They continued to ask these terrible questions over and over again, but they never stopped. Where did you make contact with her? The number of times? Do you have any threats against her to keep quiet? It was like if I was about to puke up inside of me. I was able to hear Beth in the other room, continuing to act as if she were crying, and she was saying things that I should have understood because I had seen the indications. At that moment, Dad was simply standing there with his fists clenched. He was not making any sound. I was asked by the police if I would like to present a statement. I informed them that Beth was lying and that she was attempting to get rid of me because I have witnessed her having an affair with my father. It was a terrible error. They did not believe what I said. When my father heard me say that, he went completely insane. He began yelling at me, saying that I was attempting to destroy his marriage because I was envious of Jenny. He also called me every name you can think of and claimed that I was crazy in the head and needed assistance. It is evident that the police were unable to find any genuine proof because nothing ever occurred, and in addition, I was only 15 years old at the time, but the harm had already been done. My father took a garbage bag and hurled it at me, telling me that I had 10 minutes to gather my belongings and leave. He also threatened to murder me if I ever came close to Jenny again. I made one more attempt to tell him about Beth and Mark, but he grabbed me by the shirt and pushed me toward the stairs. I was unable to tell him anything about them. This was the first time I'd ever seen him so angry. I was the only one who could see the teeny-tiny grin that Beth was wearing as she stood there. In an attempt to retrieve my Game Boy, I collected whatever clothes I could fit into the bag as well as my school backpack. However, my father informed me that everything in the home was his because he had paid for it. During the entire time that I was up there, I could hear Beth downstairs, most likely assuring that Dad would continue to be angry. I went back down, and Jenny was waiting for me there. It seemed as though she was perplexed, as if she was unable to comprehend what was taking place. It seemed as though Beth was attempting to shield her from me by wrapping her arms around her. The look that Jenny has on her face is the thing that makes me laugh the most. Even then, she was a child. When Beth wanted to get rid of me, she exploited her own kid. My father urged me to hand over the key to my residence and asserted that I was no longer his son. Beth made a phony expression of sadness and replied, "Perhaps one day you will receive the assistance that you require." Despite the fact that I wanted to shout that she was lying and that she was the one who required assistance, I couldn't bring myself to do so. They showed no sign of believing what I said. As I was leaving, they observed me, most likely to make sure that I had actually left. Only once did I look back. Despite the fact that Beth was still acting like she was crying, her father was hugging Jenny. For the last time, I heard my father assuring Jenny that she was safe at this moment. That night, I wandered around for a considerable amount of time, had approximately $40 in my wallet, and had no real idea what to do. Because Beth had already informed all of my friends' parents that I was some kind of predator, I was unable to visit any of their homes. This whole affair had been meticulously plotted out by her. A building that had been abandoned and was occupied by some homeless men was discovered. During the first night, they allowed me to stay there as a guest, and that was where I remained for the subsequent few months. Due to the fact that I was unable to attend school anymore. Because I was only 15 years old, I was unable to find a genuine work. To satisfy my hunger, I did certain things that I am not proud of. What is the most terrible aspect? When Beth told her version of the story, she made sure that everyone in town heard it. There was nowhere I could go where I wouldn't be met with these looks from people. I shed all of my companions. Even teachers who loved me in the past would no longer engage in conversation with me. Just like that, my entire life was gone. Because of this, I was eventually forced to leave the town. After all was said and done, I ended up staying in that abandoned building for around 6 months. It was an ancient warehouse that was located close to the train tracks. Other males, maybe between 5 and 6 in number, were also residing there. You should realize that the majority of them were truly good people who just happened to have horrible luck. Tom, who was a more senior individual, took me under his wing in a sense. After his wife passed away and he was laid off from his work, he had been living on the streets for a number of years. Things like where to acquire food, which establishments would allow you use their bathroom, how to stay warm in the cold, and other fundamental survival skills that I never thought I'd need to know were among the things that he taught me. I kept believing that my father would finally come to his senses, acknowledge the reality of the situation, and come and collect me, but he never did. But he simply did not care. I attempted to find employment, but no one would choose to hire me. Beth had made certain that everyone in our tiny community was aware of her account of the events that transpired. Not even McDonald's was willing to hire me. When I was at the grocery store, I was the guy that everyone discussed in hushed tones. As soon as they noticed me approaching, parents would practically take their children away from me. To make ends meet, I started engaging in some questionable activities, nothing violent, but sure. It is not a period in my life that I am proud of. You know, Tom kept telling me that I ought to leave town and start over somewhere else, but I was afraid of what would happen. In all honesty, I was simply a child. In the middle of the night, these law enforcement officers showed up at the warehouse. Where was I supposed to go? We had been accused of trespassing by a concerned party. 10 minutes were allotted to us in order to clear out. That night, I misplaced the most of my belongings, or at least the few things I had left. We spent the entire night walking to the next town over, which was Tom and I. This truck stop diner was where we found ourselves. At that moment, I was calculating my money and had approximately $27 left when Tom informed me that he has a relative in the city who might be able to assist me. His cousin, who manages a few eateries, is owed a favor by him, according to him. It was approximately 200 miles away from the metropolis, but what else was I going to do? Tom handed me the address of his cousin as well as the last $40 he had. I was instructed to leave while I still had the opportunity to do so. Stated that he was too old to begin again, but that I still had a chance to succeed. Tom was never seen again after that point. On occasion, I find myself wondering what became of him. After taking a Greyhound to the city, I slept in the bus terminal for the first week of my stay there, and I was finally able to locate Dave, Tom's cousin. He turned out to be nothing like what I had anticipated. He was a very well-dressed individual who managed 3 separate restaurants. At this upscale Italian restaurant, he offered me a position at the dishwashing station. The initial few months were difficult, and I found myself sleeping in the storage area of the restaurant. I had to save every dime I could get my hands on in order to ultimately have enough money to rent this tiny room in a really nasty area of town, but hey, it was mine. Dave allowed me to crash there with him after hours. I started out as a dishwasher, then went up to the position of prep cook, and then became a line cook. I learned everything I could about the restaurant industry. My ability to work with numbers was recognized by the head chef, who then began instructing me on topics such as food costs, inventories, and other such topics. Amy was one of the restaurant's regular patrons that they had. She would come in with her mother around twice a week, and ever since I started working as a waiter, she would always sit in my area. She was attending college and was there to study business or something. Every time there wasn't a lot going on, we would talk. I had been looking at her for years, but she was the first person who didn't look at me like I was garbage. That very first night, I can recall every single thing that she said. "Hey, what's the deal with this place?" she inquired while staring at me rather than the menu being presented to her. "It's true that the carbonara is very amazing." I uttered those words, undoubtedly sounding like an idiot, about how Marco creates the sauce from scratch. "Is it true that you are aware of who makes the food?" It was a smile. In the majority of the places I visit, the servers simply pillage the specials and then vanish. To put it another way, we ended up talking about food for approximately 10 minutes. Simply sitting there with a smile on her face was her mother. I overheard her mother saying, "Amy, please stop being such a nuisance to the poor waiter. He has other tables." Amy giggled as she looked around the empty restaurant and said, "Yeah, Mom, it's obvious that he's completely overwhelmed." The frequency with which they came in increased, and they consistently requested my sector. In the course of her studies in business at the nearby college, Amy would occasionally bring her assignments with her. One evening, she was having a difficult time with certain accounting-related tasks. While she was staring over her textbook, she moaned and said, "This makes no sense. How can a business be in the red while still claiming to have made a profit?" When I was refilling her drink, I said something about creative accounting. "It seems likely that they are manipulating the figures in order to make it appear more favorable to investors." It was as though she had a second head when she gazed at me. "How did you come to know about accounting for corporations?" To tell you the truth, I had been reading business books at the library because I wanted to educate myself on how restaurants functioned so that I could possibly operate my own one day. I informed her of this, and she became really ecstatic. "That is very incredible. The vast majority of folks our age are not interested in this stuff. Hey, would you like to have a look at this issue with me?" I was seated at her table during my break, assisting her with her homework, and the next thing I knew, I was there. Her mother would simply observe us with a smile that conveyed her wisdom. This continued on for a length of time. I would try my best not to fall in love with Amy whenever she came in, and we would talk about various business-related topics. As a side note, I failed badly at that particular part. She had a lot of intelligence, but she never made me feel incapable. "This one occasion," she said, "I don't get why you're working here. I don't really understand it. Clearly, you are very skilled in this business-related stuff." I mumbled, feeling embarrassed, that not everyone has the financial means to attend college. "You don't need to go to college in order to be successful," she added. Despite the fact that he now owns 3 businesses, my father never went. Experience, according to him, is more important than degrees. That exchange imprinted itself on my mind, and I began to consider the possibility that I could do more than just work in restaurants. I eventually earned my general equivalency diploma by studying at the library on my days off. I was able to complete the math sections with the assistance of Amy. Because I was too afraid that she would quit talking to me if she knew, she never asked about my background, and I decided not to tell her about it either. That was my routine for around 5 years. I would wake up, go to work, study, and then go to sleep. In all honesty, I didn't date and I didn't make any friends. I was simply focused on surviving and trying to improve myself. During the entire time, I couldn't stop thinking about Jenny, and I hoped that Beth wasn't making her life too difficult. In the middle of the night, Amy arrived looking really excited. Guess what? Her father is seeking for someone to assist him in managing his new property development project. The position is entry-level, but there is a lot of possibility for advancement. Put in your application. I went completely numb. Despite the fact that I never even completed high school, Amy, you have earned your GED, right? Only that is of any significance. Okay, just give it a shot. Which of the worst possible outcomes is possible? The absolute worst thing that might happen is that she would learn about my history, about Beth's falsehoods, and about everything else. But Amy continued to insist. Please, for the sake of me, Dad, put your faith in my judgment, and I am confident that you would master this. I applied, but I had to borrow a suit from Dave because it still didn't fit properly. There was a terrifying interview. It seemed like Amy's father had been staring at me for a full minute before he finally spoke. He said, "Amy indicates that you have a good understanding of business." I was able to discuss intelligently about the trends in property development that I had read about, and I even offered some suggestions for his new project. By suggesting some ideas, simply nodding and saying, "You begin on Monday," was all he did at the end. After I informed Amy that I had been hired, she gave me a hug. This was the first time in years that someone had hugged me. I came dangerously close to crying right there in the restaurant. "I told you that you were capable of doing it," she revealed. Everything changed when I got that job. As time went on, her father became the kind of father I hoped I had. Additionally, he taught me all there is to know about real estate development and truly listened to me when I had ideas. At the end of the first year, I was in charge of my own projects. Through it all, Amy and I grew closer to one another. Despite the fact that we would drink coffee together after work and talk for hours, I never asked her out because I kept thinking about Beth's falsehoods and about my own history. There was a guy who lived on the streets who was not worthy of Amy's respect. Then came the night that brought about each and every change. We were the only ones in the office, and we were working late on a proposal for a project. Amy immediately added, "You know, for someone who is so knowledgeable about business, when it comes to certain things, you are really stupid." "May I ask what you mean?" It was as if she was seeing me in the eyes. "I've been waiting for you to ask me out for the past month and a half. The only thing I did was sit there like a fool until I finally managed to say, 'Amy, I'm not good enough for you. You don't know everything there is to know about me.' She suggested that you give me a shot. So I just finished telling her everything. With regard to Beth. Concerning the lies. With regard to being homeless. Persisted in waiting for her to exhibit a look of revulsion or fear. Instead, she began to cry with emotion. After that, she became angry, not at me but at Beth and my father. It was those dreadful individuals, she stated. Why would they do anything like that to their own son? After that, she kissed me, and she did it by simply reaching across the desk and kissing me. And that was the moment when Amy and I eventually became romantically involved. However, life has a way of summoning memories from the past at the most inopportune times. Once we started dating, Amy and I were married in a relatively short amount of time. In fact, her family was so wonderful that they treated me as if I were their own son. After the birth of our first child, a son, we purchased a stunning home with 5 bedrooms that is located in a desirable area. All was well with life. Approximately 3 months ago, I was at my place of employment and was surfing through Facebook when I came across this friend request. My father appears to be much older than I had recalled when I looked at his profile picture. I was a complete moron, sitting there and gazing at my phone like a fool. The moment Amy arrived at her house, she instantly became aware of a problem. I was not doing anything but staring at nothing while I sat in our kitchen. "What's the matter, sweetheart?" she inquired while she was putting our son to sleep for the day. My father discovered me on Facebook, I relayed. The friend request was sent by him. She took a seat next to me. What exactly are you planning to do? I have no idea. Although I have not yet opened his message. Would you like me to read it first? She received my phone from me. The message was opened by her, and she immediately began reading it aloud. So, I am aware that it has been a very long time. The fact that I am getting older has caused me to reflect a great deal on the past. Every single day, I find myself thinking about you. I can't do it. We both want to put everything in their proper place. Jennifer is longing for her older brother. Give us the opportunity to explain, if you will. Kindly, Dad. A laugh came out of me, but it wasn't a pleasant one. Does Jenny remember me? It is highly likely that she does not even remember me. He was 8 years old when everything took place. The hand of Amy was squeezed. There is no need for you to answer. But I did it. Now, after 16 years, I wanted to know why, even though it's possible that I'm an idiot. The request was accepted, and I responded with a note asking why now. His reaction came quite quickly. Now I am 58 years old. Experienced a few health scares. Awoke me to the fact that life is too short to harbor resentment. Attend is a wedding coming up for Jenny, and it would mean a great deal to have you attend. We went back and forth via SMS for a couple of weeks. Discovered that Jenny is now 24 years old and works in marketing. Engaged to a lawyer person of some kind. As far as Dad is concerned, Beth has not changed at all. Indeed, I have no doubt that she is. Amy often cautioned me to exercise caution. As she put it, people don't really change all that much. I wanted to believe that Dad had changed, but I couldn't. What a moron, right? They desired to pay a visit. Amy claimed that it was up to me to decide, but she would back anything I chose to do. Therefore, I responded with a yes. It was a terrible error. It was a Saturday morning when they entered the room. Dad appeared to be getting older. For example, they are very old, have gray hair, and walk with a slight limp. Actually, Beth appeared to be exactly the same, and she continued to wear her artificial smile. I was the only person who seemed to notice that Jenny had grown up and looked even more like Mark than she had before. Everyone was at a loss for words for the first few minutes of the meeting. Later, Jenny viewed photographs of our family. Do you have a son here? While seeing photographs of our 3-year-old child, she inquired. Certainly, that is Jake, I stated. It was then that she began to cry and she muttered, I am an aunt. It was Beth, the same Beth, who went straight to her room to console her. I was surprised to see my father walking into my home as if he had always been there. His eyes swept over everything with that barely concealed approval that he never expressed to me before. He said, You've done well for yourself, and he nodded his head. What about the development of real estate? No way I could have predicted that. My arms were folded, and I was already getting ready for whatever this visit was going to be about overall. As opposed to other individuals, Amy's father gave me a chance, I murmured, allowing the words to linger in my mouth. Before there was an excessive amount of stillness, Beth, who is always the spin doctor, jumped in. At that time, we all made mistakes, she added with a sweet tone in her voice. What we are here to do is put everything in order. Amy, who had been standing close to the entrance as if she were just waiting for an excuse to go, grabbed the item out of the room without delay. She said, I'll check on Jake, and then she vanished before she could say something that she would later come to regret. Brilliant. In contrast, Jenny did not possess such a filter. As she moved through the living room, her fingers skimmed across the walls and the furnishings, giving the impression that she was attempting to stake her claim to the space. As she looked down the corridor, she remarked that this mansion is truly remarkable. If you only have one child, you have 5 bedrooms, right? I forged a smile that was pleasant. I mentioned that we are planning for more, and we utilize one of them as an office. Certainly, it is none of your business to do so. My father put his hand on my shoulder and led me to my office as he was doing the entire let's talk man-to-man act. That ought to have been my first clue. As if he were the owner of my chair, he sank into it. He began by saying, Son, I have a question for you that is very important. I refrained from moving. What is it? Your sister is going to create a family together by getting married." For a few moments, he allowed that to sink in, as if it were intended to have some significance for me. In spite of the fact that everything is so pricey these days, they are looking for a house. As I could already see where this was going, my stomach churned and I thought to myself, "No way." "Furthermore," he said, gesturing around as if he were trying to sell me my very own damn house. "You have all this space," he said. "There are 5 bedrooms available for 3 individuals. This is the kind of environment that Jenny and Steve might truly benefit from. If you continue to do well, you could be able to purchase another home." As I waited for the punchline, I focused my attention on him. "Is it possible that you are requesting that I hand over my home to Jenny?" On the other hand, he stated that it was not precisely a gift, as if that somehow made it better. "Perhaps offer them a low price for it. You have a solid income right now." Indeed, I completely lost it. "Get out, I told you." He let out a sigh of exasperation, as if I were the one who was being troublesome. "Son, try to rationalize the situation. It's your sister, the sister you chose over me, right?" Despite the fact that my voice came out more harsh than I had intended, I didn't care. "Which of these did you force me to leave? Who is that sister?" A misunderstanding occurred with that. I let out a burst of laughter. "Something that's not clear? At 15 years old, you threw me out. On the streets was where I lived." He had the audacity to put on an angry expression, as if I were bringing up something that was inconvenient. "It is no longer relevant. Jenny is in need of. My hands were clenched into fists at my sides, and my voice became louder. What exactly was it that I required? Is it possible that my father believed in me? It was before he could come up with another reason that Beth rushed in, with that false air of concern plastered all over her face. "Is everything all right in this room?" A bitter, sarcastic laugh came out of my mouth. "You're absolutely right, Beth. Everything is wonderful." I smiled at her with a grin that was so keen it could cut. "For whatever reason, my father is requesting that I hand over my home to your daughter, who is not even his biological child." It was completely silence in the room. As the color left Beth's face, her father became ice-cold. Jenny stepped in, appearing perplexed and most likely attempting to determine whether or not she had understood what I had said. When that happened, the entire game was completely different. In order to find Amy and Jake, I just strolled out of my office and went to find them. I discovered them in the backyard, where Jake was playing with his trucks while Amy observed him. I did not stay around to watch the impact of the repercussions. After taking a single look at my face, she was aware that something had occurred. During the time when everyone else was still trying to digest what I had said, she brought Jake inside. Beth attempted to repair the damage by informing her father that she was lying and that she was simply attempting to hurt them, as she had done in the past. This was a classic Beth ploy. Nevertheless, this time around, Dad was not convinced. Perhaps it was because Jenny was standing right there, looking just like Mark, or perhaps he had been skeptical from the beginning. Directly at that moment, he demanded a DNA test. Jenny began to cry, and not the artificial sort like her mother did. Rather, she wept that were genuine and bewildered. The question of what was going on and why everyone was yelling kept coming up at her. "I was just trying to wreck their lives because I was jealous," Beth said to her as she grabbed her and roughly dragged her out of our house. She said that I was simply causing trouble again. Dad remained in the house. In the course of a considerable amount of time, he remained silent and remained seated in our living room, staring at nothing. After that, he inquired as to how I had come to know. I then proceeded to tell him everything, including the fact that I had seen Beth with Mark in the park when I was 15 years old, the fact that Jenny looked exactly like him, and the fact that Beth had framed me when she knew that I might tell about it. In the first, he couldn't believe me and kept telling me that I was mistaken and that Beth would never act in such a way. However, I could see the uncertainty eating away at him. Unexpectedly, all of those seemingly insignificant details that had never made sense were falling into place. The reddish-brown hair that none of them had, the facial traits that were so different from those of everyone else in the family, and Beth's persistent desire to keep me away from Jenny were all things that stood out to me. The following week was a frenzy. Dad did in fact get the DNA test done, and when he received the findings, he came to my office. He didn't even wait to get home. He simply strolled in, sat down, and started bawling. He had no probability of being Jenny's father, according to the test. Everything that he believed he knew about his life over the course of the previous 24 years was a lie. In spite of the fact that there was evidence that I had been telling the truth from the beginning, I ended up feeling a sense of emptiness as I watched my father cry in my office. I should have felt content, maybe even happy. This man, who had always appeared to be so powerful and who mesmerized me when I was a child, appeared to be absolutely broken. He inquired about Mark, asking me if I knew where he was and what he was doing. I told him what little I knew, which was that Mark used to hang out in homeless locations occasionally, and he was typically in a bad mood. I haven't seen him in years, and I have no idea if he is even still alive. Just 10 minutes after leaving my office, Dad appeared to have aged 20 years in a span of 10 minutes. However, he was not defeated, rather, he was enraged. It was no longer my responsibility to deal with their issue. I believed that was the end of it. I let them handle their own mess. The following day, Amy called me at work to let me know that it turned out that Dad had gone home and misplaced it. As she often does, Beth attempted to spin the situation by claiming that the test must have been incorrect and that the laboratory had made a mistake. However, for the first time, Dad did not accept it. The culmination of decades of deceit and manipulation came tumbling down all at once, and he lost his temper. Not only did he harm her, but he also yelled at her. She has 3 shattered vertebrae and is currently being treated at the hospital. She would most likely require pain medication for the rest of her life, according to the doctors. It was Jenny who reported the incident to the authorities, and Dad was taken into custody right there in their living room. Because he has no criminal history and because his age may work in his favor, they are considering a sentence of 3 to 5 years. Nonetheless, Beth's family is advocating for the maximum possible punishment from the court. Oh, and Jenny. Overnight, her entire world came crashing down around her. Because it turns out that her affluent lawyer fiancé was not interested in inheriting this degree of baggage, the wedding has been called off. Now, she has been calling me on my phone and pleading with me to assist her in locating her biological father. I keep hearing from Amy that I should block all of them, that I should just go and be done with it, and it's likely that she is right. There is a portion of me that is unable to do so, not for Beth or for Dad, but for Jenny. No one asked her for any of this to happen. All of the things that she believed to be true about her life turned out to be absolutely false. After that, I learned today that Beth is already dependent on the pain medication. Jenny is currently live with her aunt, and her family has refused to even speak to Beth. Her family has checked her into rehabilitation. Just like that, their beautiful little family is gone, and Dad is faced with the possibility of serving real prison time. And what is the most peculiar aspect? When it comes to any of it, I don't feel well. I was under the impression that showing that I was speaking the truth would be gratifying, that I would finally feel some kind of justice, but instead, it seems hollow, like watching a house burn down long after there is nothing left inside to save. However, at that time, I was just concerned with tending to my family. Those additional bedrooms were finally going to be put to good use, but not in the way that Dad and Beth had anticipated. Amy was pregnant with a girl this time, and she was expecting her second child. I find it amusing how life may occasionally work out. On the other hand, after a period of 2 months, everything changed, and the situation has become even more problematic. Just a month ago, Dad was put on trial. My attorney strongly discouraged me against going, and I honestly did not want to meet any of them. As a result, I did not go. It was through Jenny that I learned that he was given 3 years. It may have been more worse, but the judge took into account his age and the fact that he had no criminal record. In spite of this, Beth is still in rehabilitation, and it turns out that she had been using pain medication for a very long time before her father admitted her to the hospital. Beth is 58 years old. Jenny was informed by her sister that Beth has been using them for years, and that they have just hit the mark brilliantly. Why she was always so paranoid and making up crazy stuff is now something that makes perfect sense. There is a possibility that she will require treatment for at least 6 more months. Jenny has been doing well, although she is not doing particularly well. She went out on her own to hunt for Mark, making inquiries at various homeless shelters and other local establishments. At long last, the person who knew him was located. As it turns out, he passed just 2 years ago as a result of an overdose that occurred behind a convenience shop. In the moment when she learned the news, Jenny utterly collapsed. It's like she's sending me these lengthy texts at 3 in the morning, talking about how her entire life feels like a lie. She says that she can't even look in the mirror anymore because all she sees is Mark's face. I feel awful for her, but Amy tells me that I need to keep my distance from her. When I respond to Jenny, she becomes more attached to me and begins asking more questions about the past. She is absolutely correct in this assessment. The most peculiar aspect: there was an attempt made by Jenny's ex-boyfriend to get in touch with me. He was concerned about the possibility of having children with her and wanted to know if the craziness ran in the family. I told him to get lost, that while I understand that Jenny is going through what she is, she does not deserve to be judged in such a manner. I recently learned that Beth has been spreading the rumor that I set up the whole thing with Mark in order to exact revenge. Despite the fact that the DNA test has shown that Jenny is not the child of her father, she is still attempting to portray me as the villain. In fact, there are several of our longtime neighbors who believe her. Apparently, people who live in small towns enjoy drama. The pregnancy of Amy is progressing nicely, and we are expecting a girl. When I look at my son playing, I sometimes think about Jenny when she was that age. It makes me wonder if things would have been different if my father had spotted the indications sooner or if I had told someone else about seeing Beth with Mark. On the other hand, you can't alter the past, right? At this moment, the house has a different vibe, as if all of the negative energy that was present during their visit has finally been removed. In order to provide a nursery for the baby, we are transforming Jenny's future room, which is the space that her father intended us to give her. Amy is completely prepared, with a pink and gray color scheme and a ceiling decorated with miniature stars. Tom, the homeless man who assisted me when I was initially kicked out of the house, is still something that I occasionally think about. I really wish I could tell him how things turned out and demonstrate to him that I was able to accomplish something, just as he had said I could. I hope he is doing well, wherever he may be. I have been receiving messages from my father's side of the family, some of which are on his side and others of which are angry with him for what he did to Beth. During the years that I was without a house, none of them ever showed any concern for my location. It's funny how often the family unit works. To put it simply, that is pretty much where things are at the moment. I'm not sure there is much more to share, but you know, life goes on. I would want to express my gratitude to everyone who has been following our tale and providing their support. Writing all of this down was more helpful than I had anticipated it would be. Sincere gratitude goes out to the one who suggested therapy. You were absolutely correct. Jenny sent me a final message yesterday, in which she informed me that she is moving out of state and beginning a new life someplace else. She asked if we could continue in touch, and I responded by saying that I would be happy to do so in the future, but not right now because I need to concentrate on my own family for a bit. So that's all, I suppose.